everyone, and welcome back to the Mystery Theory podcast. Today, we're going to start 2019 with the first episode, and not only that, we're going to start it with an unsolved mystery that it's very particular. It's kind of a series of disappearances that I've been researching that I find very, very, I don't want to call them weird, but the circumstances and what happened at the end, it really leaves you thinking that it must have been something not human. And I'm going to leave you with that. But of course, there's a lot of people that have different reasons or theories of what could have happened, and we're going to explore those as well. But yeah, this was very, very interesting. Now, before I start this case, I want to just kind of let you know where I'm coming from with this. I love national parks. I love national forests. I love backpacking. I love hiking. I love remote areas. I love connecting with nature. So no matter how much research I've done, I think, I just have that thing in me that really, even though these things happened while one of those activities that I just mentioned, while people were doing those activities, it really doesn't creep me out to the point that I wouldn't do it. So I just wanted to let you know, because there are some not cases but videos out there and podcasts that kind of take the fear route. I am not coming from that route. I'm just sharing the story, and hopefully we can come up with different theories at the end of what could have happened to Mike Herdman. Now, he was 36 years old. He was a firefighter. He was an athletic man. He was fit, of course, and he was very adventurous. He loved to hike. He loved to backpack, and he was an outdoorsy kind of guy. So he was planning his next backpacking trip. He wanted to do a 4-day backpacking trip, and he ended up recruiting one of his friends and co-workers or colleagues that to go hiking and to go backpacking for that 4-day trip together. Now, Mike had a dog. His name was Duke, and he was going to be part of the adventure. Now, this happened in California, in Los Padres National Forest. They planned this 4-day backpacking trip, and the expert in this duo was Mike. Mike had the experience, Mike had the gear, Mike had everything that you probably need when you're going to go backpacking. Even though 4 days is not a really long time for a backpacking trip, it is still significant, and there's a lot of things that you have to keep in mind, like bears. Where are you going to store your food? And be prepared for all those things. So Mike was the one that knew how to hike, how to backpack, and he just invited his friend along who wanted to enjoy it as well. Now, Los Padres National Forest, it's big. In the area where they were hiking, I've been to that area several times, and it's beautiful. It really is beautiful. And during the summertime, even though it does get hot, there are certain higher places that it gets really, really comfortable, and it's just beautiful, and it's a good place to be at. So on June 13th, 2014, they decided to go. That was the day that they were going to start their backpacking trip. They parked their vehicle in the parking lot area, and they headed to the trailhead area. Now they hiked and they arrived to a particular place close to the river. Now that is where they decided to set up camp. Mike's friend, his name was Tyler, and I'm going to refer to him as Tyler. I kind of forgot to mention that. But they both were camping in this particular place, or they were staying for a night. When the second night, Mike saw his dog, Duke, run into the wilderness like a maniac, and Mike decided to follow him. At the time, they were chilling, they were hanging out, not doing anything crazy. And it was the evening time. So Mike was really wearing just some shorts and a t-shirt and no shoes because they were done hiking for the day. When Duke kind of, I don't know, run, like something that wasn't normal for Duke. He usually was very mellow. He would listen and, not the kind of dog that you would have to have on a leash at all times. Believe me, I have one of those dogs, and it's hard to hike with that kind of dog. But Duke was very used to this, so it was very weird that he took off. And Mike, of course, as I mentioned before, decided to follow him, run and call his name, and try to have him to come back to camp. Tyler stayed behind. Remember, this was the evening, okay? And if you know anything about backpacking or hiking for that matter, you know that dusk and the early, when it's starting the sun to come up and when it's going down, there is a certain period where wildlife is more active. So not everyone is willing to go into a dark forest or a dark area, especially if you're not familiar with it, and especially if you're not somebody experienced. So Mike followed Duke, and after a few minutes, Tyler realized that neither of them came back. Now, a lot of people say, why would Mike follow the dog? Pretty sure that the dog would have come back, and at the end of the story, you'll know what happened to the dog. But it's interesting to know that Mike decided to run behind him, not put shoes on, which in my mind, being a dog owner and a dog lover, I would have done the same thing. I would have just run. I wouldn't have thought about putting my shoes on. People say it's 20 seconds. Okay, 20 seconds. But maybe you don't have your shoes right there. In your mind at that second, I mean, if you are a true dog lover, it's kind of, you're seeing one of your kids run away into the forest. So it's the evening time. You don't want them to be lost there. So I kind of get how or why he decided to follow Duke into the forest. So there's no doubt in my mind that it's not weird that he did that. But for some people, they find it very, very weird that he did it. Okay. So Tyler decided to go look for him. I don't know for how long he looked for him. I read articles that said that he looked throughout the night, but he didn't get lost and he wasn't experienced. So I'm assuming that he checked the surrounding areas and kind of the direction that Mike took or followed Duke. So he looked, he couldn't find him. He called for him, pretty freaked out, and couldn't find him. The next morning, he continued to look for him. When he finally realized that he probably was too far away, he probably got lost or something happened to him, and that he needed to go get help. Now remember that he wasn't the most experienced hiker, and so he tried to follow the trail back and try to get some help. There are some stories out there that just tell you that he got help the next day and reported his friend missing. But I read in several articles that it wasn't that easy, that he actually tried to find his way back and got lost. And at one point, he ran into some fishermen that described Tyler as dehydrated and disoriented, and that, he wasn't far off. So they kind of guided him and took him back to the trailhead where the car was and where they were going to report Mike as missing. So it wasn't the easiest thing for Tyler either, not only to get out of where they were at. So I can assume that it wasn't, very close to the trailhead. They were hiking and they did, quite a few miles. And you can lose, especially if you're the kind of person that is trusting the one that is leading this and not really paying attention. That is one of the things that, will get you lost into the woods. You might be not that far from the trailhead, but you can go around in circles and get yourself exhausted and dehydrated because you didn't plan to be out for that long. And so it makes sense that even for him, it was hard to find his way out. So it wasn't like they were following this trailhead and they, the trail, I should say, and they can't just buy it. No, he did have to find his way around. And remember that they were closer by the river, so I'm assuming that he was following the river or something, and that's where he found the fishermen. So the search started, and they had 90 people searching, and they were doing a 50 square mile area. They were searching for Mike. Now, they also had helicopters and they had drones, and as far as I know, and I've heard this from an author that writes about this kind of disappearance, David, can't remember his last name, but he said that they were even looking with those, I can't remember the name, but that it sees the heat, and so the helicopter is not actually looking for a person, but that heat pattern. Okay, that they were looking with those as well. I'm trying to find a mic. Just so you get an idea, the search was really thorough, but also it was very, personal for most of the searchers. This was an Arcadia firefighter. This was a very, healthy and fit man, that it's very bizarre that he got lost and that he wasn't in the area where he should be. So it got personal, and people spent hours and hours looking for Mike. It got to the point that some people in the search party, they got dehydrated, they got heat exhaustion because of how hot it was while they were looking for Mike. And even one of the people that was searching for him was bitten by a rattlesnake, and he needed 52 vials, I think, of antivenom to survive. So this search wasn't in the easiest area of the national forest. It wasn't in the best weather conditions, which kind of pushed them a little bit more, because if they were getting heat exhaustion, and if they were getting dehydrated, and if rattlesnakes were around, you can only imagine something like that happened to Mike. Now, on June 23rd, Duke, the dog, came back to the parking lot where they parked for their hiking backpacking trip. He was exhausted and disoriented, and it took them a while to catch him because he was really apprehensive. I'm assuming because of what happened to him during all those days that he survived in the wilderness, but also we have to remember his behavior right before he ran from camp. And let's think about it. There are many options and many different scenarios why he could have run away from camp. The one that would make me a little bit more nervous, and the one that I know my dogs would do, is if they saw something. Let's say they saw a raccoon or a bear or a coyote or something like that. Coyotes are smart. They just show themselves one of them, and then the dog think, okay, I'm gonna chase this thing that is trying to make him chase him, and then they chase them to an area where the rest of the coyotes are, and then they just kill them. It's something that happens very often with dogs, so I would have been afraid of that, and I would have followed my dog, hoping that he would listen to me and come back to me. I don't think Mike saw anything before disappearing, but you can only assume that they're chasing something. Why would he leave? Why would he run? Why would the dog do that? He wasn't that kind of dog. So what happened to him? It's something that we don't know. If only dogs could talk and tell us, but that's not the case. So whatever it was, he came back on the 23rd, and he was shaken up and everything. There are some articles that say that they didn't catch him. They were older articles, and the new one said that they ended up catching him. And sadly, on June 27th, 4 days later, they found Mike's body in an area that they haven't searched, but it was only three quarters of a mile from where he was last seen in camp. Now, the medical examiner took the body, and he compared dental records, and it was in fact Mike. The death was ruled accidental, and I'm just looking at my notes just to make sure I don't get this wrong, but it was caused by a blunt force, and they suspected no foul play, and they knew that he was dead for several days. So this wasn't something that happened recently. The medical examiner concluded that he might have fallen from a cliff, and that's how he probably hit his head against a rock or something and died. Now that kind of makes sense, right? Well, let's go a little bit deeper, because there's a lot of things that do not make sense in this investigation. And the funny thing is that the police, when they are giving the report of what happened, how they found him, and where they found him, how, it doesn't make sense to them either. It's not like they're hiding something. It just doesn't make sense for the police or for anybody for that matter. So, they found the body while the helicopter was dropping off some searchers. The search was still going on that day, and so the helicopter brought the searchers to the area. And when he was leaving, he noticed something out of the ordinary. Now, bless their heart, what does it look out of the ordinary for somebody that is so high up, even when they're trying to take off? I don't know. But the pilot saw something that at first he thought it was a sleeping bag. It was something that didn't belong. So that's how he described it. When they got closer, they realized that it was actually a body. And that's how they found him, okay? Then the medical examiner took the body and found everything that I share with you today. Now, they also found traces of alcohol, and I'm going to explain because it doesn't really make sense. And they also found ecstasy in his body. There is a good explanation for that, okay? The ecstasy is because they found a mix of amphetamines and MDMA. Now, that combination, it's something very common for the treatment of some neurological things, okay? And I don't think I wrote it down here, but it's something that it really, the amounts that he had in him was more conducive to be, or something more likely to be, a drug that he took as a prescription, like maybe for something neurological that he was dealing with. I don't want to be here and tell you different sicknesses that I'm not familiar with, but according to the medical examiner, these two components are found in some medicines to treat. And it was so low that it kind of made sense that it was some kind of a medicine, prescribed medicine that he was taking. The alcohol, however, that was something that threw a lot of people off. Yes, they were chilling in camp. They were not going to hike, for the rest of the day. It was the evening time. Maybe he got, maybe he had a beer. Maybe he had something. But according to the medical examiner, the levels of alcohol kind of go lower and lower as the body stays, as you're dead for longer. And it also, your body starts to produce ethanol, which is alcohol. And so it was so little that the alcohol that it was found in him was probably produced by his body after he was dead. So, all that goes to say that the reports that kind of blame drugs and alcohol in this case, to me, they're debunked, because I don't see somebody going for a backpack trip and do those things at night. Maybe there's people that do that. Maybe there's people out there that enjoy to do that. But it doesn't make sense that he was the responsible one, being the one that had the most experience, and that he would be impelled by alcohol and drugs at night. When, backpackers know that they have to be alert and that they have to do the things that they have to do before going to bed to avoid encounters with wildlife. So when the report came back saying that he had alcohol and ecstasy on him, a lot of people thought, well, he lost it and he ran because he was high. Not really. That's kind of the explanation of the medical examiner. But here comes the weirdest thing. His body was found 1,200 feet above where he was camping. Okay, so you mean to tell me that he ran after his dog, and the dog started climbing this canyon wall, so he decided to climb 1,200 feet to go find the dog? Not likely, right? Okay, so there's a different scenario. Maybe he did lost Duke, and he wanted to go back to camp. But even though it was nighttime, and even though maybe he didn't have the gear, you know that the river is not going to be on top of a cliff. Why was he hiking up? What was he doing up there? Did he go there, or was he taken by somebody or something up there? Just so you know, there was no physical evidence or anything that would point it to the direction that somebody took him against his will. It looked like a very bad accident. But what the police can't understand, and normal people like us can't understand, is the fact that he was way too high in altitude to do that by himself with no shoes and no gear to climb that very steep canyon wall. There are two different paths that he could have taken to get to the point where he was, and both of them were very, very hard to hike or climb, and you would need some kind of something tool, or at least have shoes on, to be able to climb to the point of where he was. So how did he get up there? How? I mean, what took him up there, and how, without leaving any traces? Because there's no evidence, no DNA, no nothing that implies another person. So how are you down here? You're somebody who knows how to backpack and how to hike, and who have been there before, and then you decide to go up when you know your camp is down. And how do you climb 1,200 feet in the middle of the night? Well, this is where the strange things start to kind of come together. If this was an isolated case, then it was just a weird case, right? But there are a series of unexplained disappearances where it happens the same thing. If the bodies or the people that get lost is found, it is found in an area where it's almost impossible for them to hike, or at least in the amount of time that they disappeared. You could have disappeared in mile 1 and then you show up in mile 150, 30 minutes later. And people, if they are conscious and if they are alive, they can't really remember. So sadly, Mike's case, it's not the only one. And it's not the only unsolved mystery that involves something that we don't know what it is. the different cases usually involve young men or ladies that are very fit, that are smart, that have the equipment, that you would never guess that they would get lost in the woods. That is the kind of people that we're comparing Mike's case to, because if he was the only one, okay, this was a weird case and bad luck. But how can we say that it's bad luck or a weird case when there's other cases just like this one where they disappear and then they show up in a place where they could have never done it by themselves? So what is going on? Well, the medical examiner just said, well, he tried to climb the wall and fell and kill him. You know, he died. But he wouldn't have done it. He wouldn't, according to his friends and family, he wouldn't have climbed that wall with no gear. And he knew that that wasn't the way back to camp. And there was no way that he was following the dog there. So the possibilities of a serial killer or somebody that was waiting in the woods to take him is not likely. We know that he just didn't go to the wilderness to get water and never came back. He was following his dog. That, for some reason, it's one of the other things very common in these disappearances. I'm going to be covering a few more like this one, so we can kind of start to get different theories of what could have happened. But just so you know, you really have to have an open mind with this thing. It kind of defies the normal, or I'm not going to say normal, but the laws of existence, basically, of what you can do in a certain amount of time, where you can climb, how you can do it. So what is this? What is taking these people? Why do some of them are found dead and why are some other ones never found and left without a trace? Like the case of Dennis Martin, remember? I shared that story. He vanished. And let me tell you, some people believe that if it rains, dogs are not going to be able to pick up the scent. Let me tell you, there are dogs that can smell, that can pick up a smell that is 30 meters underwater. Just so you know. And I'm not talking about under rainwater. I'm telling you, there are dogs that can do that when people is lost in the sea. I'll share that story sometime next week. But when the searchers are done with the search and there is no trace of the person, it's puzzling, because these are experts. They know what a drag mark looks like. They know what an animal would do to you. They know the different scenarios of things that you could have thought at the time when you got lost. So them coming back with empty hands, I'm sorry, but that's just very, very strange. So why some of them disappear and never come back, and why some of them come back but can't remember? And in this case of Mike, why was he dead? What took him that decided that he got what he wanted, or got what they wanted, and just left him there? What is that difference? What could have happened? Who could have taken him And why would he have climbed that wall? Why would he wanted to? Why would you want to climb 1,200 feet? And we know that it was early after, or shortly after, I should say, he disappeared. These things don't make sense. And the people that say, well, he was on drugs and alcohol, well, that's what the blood work said. But the medical examiner gave an explanation of what they thought. Because of the low levels of both of them, what it was. Sometimes we get mad if the medical examiner don't give out those details, but when they do and they have an explanation, people tend not to listen to the explanation and stick with the idea that there was alcohol and drugs involved. Let me know what you think about this case. What do you think happened to him? Do you think that something out of this earth took him? Do you believe that maybe there's a creature in the forest that took him and that we can't track because we don't know it exists? Do you believe that he was on drugs and that's why he climbed that cliff? What do you think the dog saw in order to run away from camp? In some of these disappearances in particular, when they take dogs, the dogs don't want to sniff. They don't want to find it. They start crying, and these are dogs that are trained to do this. So what's up with that? This is one of those unsolved mysteries that it really is hurting me to not be able to come up with a theory of what could have happened. If you want to know my theory, is something took him and placed him there. But what was it? I have no idea. Why him? Why and how whatever wanted to take him knew how to get the attention of the dog or make him run as he did. I don't think that he followed the dog and then he ran into this whatever it is that took him. I truly believe that whatever made the dog run, it was a plan from the beginning, starting with the dog and ending with him 1,200 feet over their camp. But I would like to know what you think about it. So if you're watching this on YouTube, please leave a comment down below. I would love to know what you think happened here, or if you have any other theories that maybe I didn't cover. Thank you so much for coming back for the podcast this week. I hope that you join me next one with a new case that I will be sharing with you. If you care to leave a review on iTunes, if you enjoy the content, or if you want to leave some feedback, please feel free to do that either on your Google Play Store or on your iTunes Store. Thank you so much for being there once again, and I will see you back next Wednesday. Bye, guys.